Okay, so chapter one basically is a big overview of some of the issues, but it also focuses on economics, which is very, very important um, to understand. It also talks about the business cycle, talks about competition, and the business environment that we're in right now. So that's extremely good. Okay. All right, so one little step at a time. First thing is to understand the free enterprise system. Um, Free enterprise basically means that in our particular society, we believe in private property. We believe in private ownership. And that also means we believe in private decision making. And so if you own a factory, we respect the fact that you privately can decide what you want to produce in that factory. If you own a farm, then it's your private decision making of what you're going to be growing on that farm. And so this is something that's inherent within the free enterprise system. If you start a business, you are free to decide what to produce, how to produce it, and at what price are you going to sell it, okay? Okay, so basically speaking, this is our system, the free enterprise system. Why would anyone decide to study business? That's a good question. Well, actually, it's a very practical field to study because business might, a lot of people might look at business as strictly the for-profit sector and looking at it in terms of that. But business organizations apply across the board. Whether you're in business for a profit or you're organizing yourself as a nonprofit organization and you have a mission in which you need to accomplish, then all of that's very, very important. This is where business is very practical. You might definitely apply some of these types of skills to your personal life. And so what you learn about efficiency and effectiveness in business might also have personal applications. You might really decide at some point in time that you might want to start your own business, in which case a course like this is very, very important in an understanding what it takes to actually start a business and to be an entrepreneur. Certainly it can help you choose a career. That's one of the goals of this class at the end, is to help you with a career assessment project, see if there's a particular area within the business field that is beneficial to you and something that you might look at as a career. It might also help you understand how businesses work. And so you might be a very successful employee in understanding how businesses work, and of course in who you work with. We have a very diverse cultural workplace, and it's important to understand that even though we are very different in many different ways, we can still come together as a team to get business goals accomplished. And that's important to understand. When you're at work, when you're working towards something, if you're on a team, you understand everyone's a little bit different, but the goal is the same, and you have a job to play, a role to play in getting the job done. You can also use this class to be a more informed consumer of knowing how businesses function and whether it's smart for you to spend money on certain things or not when you buy products or services. It might also help you become a more informed investor, because a lot of you might at some point in time decide that you're going to make investments with your money. As you earn more over time, you will need to look for investment opportunities to make your money grow. And this might help you understand a little bit more about that. Okay. Education makes a large difference for people in terms of their overall salary And that's very, very important to sort of understand. In most cases, the more you know, or the more skills you have, the more you have learned and you can do more for people, the more they're going to pay you. And so there it goes hand in hand also with education. The more that you learn through college, the more skills that you build through this process, the more knowledge you have, the more things you can do, the more money you're going to make. And that's basically the way it is. It's really about what can you do for me? When you're sitting down at a job interview and you want to make a good living, they're asking that question. What is it you're going to do for me? Okay, you want this type of money? Okay, how much are you going to make for me? Because you have to provide them with the benefits in order for you to get what you're looking for. You're going to have to be able to pay up, in essence, with your work skill and produce that for them. So we know that the more education people have, the more they make. Okay, this is per year. This is an average annual salary based on the Census Bureau's source down here, right? For 25 years or older. Okay, and that's important because a lot of you come out of college expecting to make a lot of money, but you need to have experience and you need to have a proven track record to be making some really good money. So your education is going to prepare you and open up some doors for you to get in certain places, but that doesn't guarantee a high salary right away, because you're going to have to prove to yourself and to everybody else that you're worth a high salary, because you have a record. Look what I have done, right? This is what a resume is about. This is what is most important in interviews, is saying, this is what I have done, okay? And this is what I can do for you. And this is why I'm worth all the money I'm asking you to pay me, okay? And if you can just excuse me for a moment, I have to deal with a music issue. Okay, and I'm back. It's amazing what shutting a door will do. Right? Okay, so let's go on here to what business is, in essence. And business basically is an organized effort to produce and sell goods and services that meet society's needs. And the reason that these individuals produce and sell these goods and services to meet the needs of society is because there's a profit in it for them. Okay, so the profit motive means that if you do something well and you're successful at it, you're going to make a lot of money. And some businesses are quite good at that. Some businesses fail at that. But we have a system in which encourages you to take risks and to start a business and meet the needs that society has. We don't rely on government to meet the needs of society. We have a very limited role for government in our society. You don't rely on the government for housing. You don't rely on the government for food. You don't rely on the government for electricity or power. You don't rely on the government for lots of different things. You have healthcare, for example. You rely on private businesses to do that. So you rely on home builders, which are private businesses, to build homes, or corporations or others that build large apartment complexes and then rent those out to you. Yes, the government does have some housing, but it's very minor, very, very minor. You rely on private companies to produce food and give it to you, or sell it directly to you through the grocery market or through a farmer's market or whatnot. These are private businesses doing that, producing it and selling it for a profit to meet the needs that you have. We rely on the power companies like Central Hudson to produce enough electricity and to distribute that around society so we can live in our homes in a hot day and have air conditioning and have all the lights on and have power and internet access and so forth and so on. Very, very important to sort of understand that we rely specifically on private businesses to produce and provide these to us. When you go to the hospital, that's not a government-run hospital. It's a private corporation. Your doctor almost always works for themselves. They're corporations providing those services. They tend to be organized into group practices. Some work for hospitals, but the hospitals are privately owned. Okay, the only way a government hospital exists is if you're a veteran. In the VA system, the government's going to provide veterans with the Veterans Administration care. Otherwise, there's none. There's none. What the government does provide for some people is insurance to get access to healthcare, but they're not providing the healthcare. They're just providing the insurance to get healthcare. Okay, so there's no government-controlled healthcare system unless you're a veteran. Okay, we rely on private companies to provide us with medical services. Same thing if you need medicine. All the drug companies are private corporations. Many of them are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The companies that are developing this vaccine that's forthcoming at some point in the next year or so, these are private companies. Now the government might be providing some money to cover some of the costs to encourage them to produce the vaccine quicker, but it's still a private company that's going to be doing it, not the government. Okay, and so we really rely on businesses for almost everything. Right? You need a ride somewhere. You're going to buy a car from some dealer. That's a private business, or you hail a taxi or an Uber. That's a private business. If you need, of course, the bus system is a government service. The trains are subway, Metro North, etc. That's a government service as well. But you're paying into that as well. So yeah, there's a mix. We do have some government benefit in society, but not much. You need a haircut, you're going to go to a private. There's no government-run barber shop. It's all private businesses. You need to go eat, you're going to a private restaurant. There's no government restaurant. Everything is based on free enterprise. Everything is based on private property in our society. And we're in no danger of losing any of that, regardless how the political system tries to scare us into thinking that somehow things are going to be different. They haven't been different for over 200 years. They've been the same. We have relied on private businesses to provide us with most of the needs that we have in society. Government is a very small part of whatever it is that we rely on. So again, the key is they produce and they sell goods and services. So a good is a physical product. So, so a car, a house, those would be goods, washing machine. But your backpack, your clothing, those are goods as well. Services is paid work. So you hire a lawyer to provide you with counsel. You hire an accountant to provide you with a certain amount of work. Those are services. You've actually hired the college to provide you with educational services. We're in the service sector. When you go to, some businesses actually do both goods and services. So you go to you get new tires, or you get an oil change. So you go to a place to get new tires. They're going to take your old tires off. That's a service. They're going to put your new tires on. That's a service. They're going to balance them. That's a service. So they're going to actually sell you the physical product, the tires themselves, plus the services of putting all that work and doing it for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. So we rely on businesses to provide almost everything in our society. And that's important to sort of understand. Now, in order for businesses to work properly, they need to be organized. They need to be organized in a very, very good way. They need, in this case, they need certain material resources. So if you are a manufacturer, manufacturers are companies that create, design, and make products. Okay, so before Tesla could have a car, they actually had to create that car on paper. They had to do models. They had to do other types of things like that. Then they had to design it, make sure all the specifications were working and testing it. And then they could send the plans to the plant, to the factory, to actually build the Teslas. And so the building part is the last stage of the game. But in order for actually to build anything or manufacture anything, you need raw materials. You need raw materials used to get stuff done. That's very true even for your local bakery. Raw materials in a bakery, you'll need your flour. You might need your sugar. You might need these are raw materials that are used in making, the donuts or the cakes or the muffins or whatever it is that they're bagels or whatever they're making. Okay, so you have material resources that are very, very important. We all buy these, the businesses buy the raw materials from other businesses. Okay, so Coca-Cola, company might need a bunch of sugar. They're going to go to a sugar farmer, or a farm that produces sugar, or a business that produces sugar to get the sugar cane or whatever it is they need. So that's basically where they get the raw materials. Some businesses grow the raw materials that we need, or produce the raw materials that we need. Other businesses buy those raw materials and make the products that we need. Human resources is about labor. It's about labor. This is where in economics, I know Karl Marx gets a bad name because, of course, you can't be socialist. But in essence, he had a very important point. He said, you put a hammer, put nails, put wood down, and watch it build itself a house. Obviously, labor is the key component in getting everything done. Okay, it takes human resources to get stuff done. And so clearly we are a critical part of that entire thing. Everything that we depend on is provided for us in some way, shape, or form by other human beings. And so human resources are critical resources in a business. Businesses, like everybody else, need financial resources. You have to have access to money. Now, this is basically what we consider, this is the capital in capitalism. So when we're talking about money, it's not that money in and of itself is what we need. It's just that we need the money to buy or build a factory. We need the money to buy robotic machines to manufacture something. We need the money to pay and get employees to help us design and do things. So the money part is sort of overblown because it's in and of itself, money sitting on a table does nothing for anybody. You have to put it to use. And the best way we put it to use is to purchase things that can be productive. So whether you are buying factory equipment, whether you are buying human labor resources that you need to get things done, whether you're buying raw materials, what have you, those financial resources purchase things that we need to produce something. In and of itself, money is useless. It's got to be put to productive purposes to be useful. And that is why we have a capital society or a capitalist society. We rely on the raising of money to buy these types of things so we can produce stuff. And very much important today is information. We live in a knowledge-based economy. Information is, of course, available almost everywhere. So that's why it's important for you these days as college students to understand good information from from bad information, or as what you've heard in the media, good news versus, what's reasonable and true and what's fake, right? And so basically speaking, there's tons of information out there, but only certain information is actually quite useful for business purposes. And that's the stuff you have to kind of weed out the rest of it and focus on what's actually useful. So information is very, very powerful. It's how we keep everything effective. It's what we use to manage everything else, really. We need good information and information resources in order to get everything done. So here, the figure in your book, this is on the bottom of page 10, if you have your book with you. But this shows the resources needed in order to produce a successful business. So businesses are organized in a few ways. We are looking at, actually it says this book has one of 3 specific types. So I will teach you this. There's actually a couple more that I would add if I wrote the book. But nonetheless, this is very good. So in many cases, all of us are going to be involved in the service business. Most of you probably work for a service-related business or have worked for a service-related business. This is where you produce a service. You produce a service. You're getting paid to produce a service. And so whether that's a haircut, legal advice, tax preparation, having your house cleaned, having your lawn, having your driveway shoveled in the wintertime. These are all services. And most of us work in service-based businesses. As a teacher at a college, colleges are service-based businesses. I work in the service industry. If you worked in restaurants, if you worked in other places, that's a service-based industry. The second type of business that they talk about, manufacturing businesses, okay? So like I mentioned earlier, manufacturers are the ones that actually create the products. They design those products and then they actually make them through a factory process. And so these are the folks that actually, these are very, very important. Manufacturing is important because these are the creators of new products. And so this is something that actually turns materials into tangible goods. Manufacturing businesses are critically important in any economy. And we do lots of manufacturing in the United States. It's just that we've lost a lot of manufacturing jobs, the factory type of jobs, to other countries. But some of them are coming back. And lastly, they call these marketing intermediaries, but it's basically anything that's retail. So throw Amazon in on all of this because Amazon doesn't make anything, but they sell a lot of stuff. Walmart is a marketing intermediary. They buy a whole bunch of products to put it in their store and have you come and buy it from them. So anyone who buys products from manufacturers in order to resell them to you is considered a marketing intermediary by definition in this book. But you and I know them as retail. And whether, I don't know where you shop, but whether you shop online or whether you actually go to a physical store, almost all of those would be considered marketing intermediaries because they bought the products, they buy the products first, put it in the store, you come in and you buy it from them. In other words, they resell it to you. So those are types of businesses here. E-businesses here, basically it's a business, but it's conducted on the internet. And so e-businesses are is a very large part of the business world today because the internet and specifically the World Wide Web portion of the internet is basically the commercial use of the internet. And the internet's been around since the 50s. It was a government military project to communicate very critical military information among researchers and the military. And in 1993, it was made public. So it was made basically into public use. And in 1993, the World Wide Web portion of the internet became commercialized. So businesses looked at the World Wide Web, the www part, as a way to promote themselves and used it as part of marketing. And that marketing then became broader into saying, hey, you can have a whole business online. And so e-business basically uses the internet as the main way of reaching people and delivering their services and goods to you. The main impetus, or the main, I guess, motivation in business is make a profit. Make a profit. Businesses, after all, need to make a profit in order to survive. It is a matter of survival. And I think, and that's why you see a lot of businesses closing during this crisis, is they're unable to make a profit. And so they're unable to survive. Profits are calculated by taking the revenue of the company. Revenue is from selling something. So when you walk into a store and you buy, say, a bottle of water from a convenience store, and you give them $2 for that bottled water, that $2 is the revenue for the company on that sale. That revenue has to pay for all the expenses of that business, and what's left is the profit. So what you learn in this class is very similar base in accounting. Everything businesses do starts with revenues. Revenue is the amount of money they are collecting by selling goods or services to their customers. Everything starts with revenue. Revenue is critically important because it's your revenue that covers all of the costs of doing business. We call those expenses. And I have to do this on my keyboard, which is painfully slow, and I apologize. From your revenue, you subtract out all your expenses. And you need to have leftover revenue, because leftover revenue is your profit. Profit in the business world and in accounting and finance is called net income. Net income. Net income is the same as profit. It means the same thing. Okay. So your net income is your profit. And notice where your net income comes from, your revenue. Everything starts by selling goods and services for a price. When you sell something to somebody, the money they give you for that service or for that product is revenue. Okay, so like I said, you walk into Walmart, you buy some video game or whatnot, or a movie or whatnot, that's what you need to these days. You are paying for that as a customer, but the way the business looks at it is they've sold you something, and that's their revenue. That's their revenue. They take that revenue, they will pay all the expenses, and what's left over is their profit. So profit and net income are exactly the same. They're interchangeable terms, okay, that you'll get to know. But sometimes, as we've seen during this crisis, businesses are unable to sell. Look at all these restaurants, right? No one's going, particularly when the crisis was going on in New York, it really peaked in April and May, right? So you had all these places like the restaurants unable to sell any food, right? So they weren't making any revenue. There was no revenue coming in. If there's no revenue coming in, does that mean that they stop paying their rent? That they stop paying employees? That they stop paying, their electric bill? No, they still have expenses. So if you have very little revenue, but you still have a lot of expenses. You're not making any money. A negative profit is also called a loss. Okay, a negative profit is also called a loss. And basically a loss happens when you have more expenses than revenue. And again, revenue is the money you're collecting from customers by selling them stuff. So less revenue really, in this case, means they had less customers come in, right? Fewer and fewer customers were going out to eat during the crisis. So they had less and less revenue, but they still had a bunch of bills to pay. And that's why a lot of them have gone out of business. Okay, not only did they shut down, some are never coming back because their business isn't viable anymore. There's no customers to sell their food and other stuff to. There's no profit to be made. There's no need to be in business because the entire purpose of being in business is to make that profit. Okay. Any questions on that? That's important. Are we okay on that? Okay. So you can type in, whether it's a chat feature, you can type in your questions at any time. You can also politely interrupt, take yourself off of mute, and ask a question. It's perfectly okay. Your book talks about stakeholders. In other words, who has a stake in the success of a business? Well, stakeholders are groups of people who are affected by an organization. And so stakeholders certainly mean the owners of the business. They mean the employees of the business, the suppliers of that business, the customers of that business, and in many cases, the community in which that business is located. And so there are many, many different types of people or groups of people who are affected by business decisions. Obviously, larger businesses will have a bigger effect than some smaller businesses, but they all have stakeholders. So this is important. This particular figure, which is in your book on page 11, you need to know, okay? So if you have your book and you look on page 11, you'll see this particular picture. Which is important, right? So profit is what remains once all the expenses have been deducted from the revenue. So everything starts with revenue, as I mentioned. Revenue is from selling your goods and services to customers. What you collect is your revenue. You have to pay your expenses from that, and what's left over is your profit. A lot of people have really, I would say, unrealistic views of how profitable businesses are. Walmart is profitable, but not by much. So for example, if you think about it, Walmart has a low price structure, right? They're always saying we're the lowest price in town. The prices keep falling, right? We have a price drop. So if your prices are dropping, right, and you're selling those goods to your customers, you're collecting less revenue. If you're collecting a smaller amount of revenue, you still have expenses to pay, but that also means your profit is smaller. So for example, for Walmart, for every dollar Walmart sells to you as a customer, you go in and buy stuff. For every dollar they collect from you, about a little more than 97 cents of that dollar covers all the expenses that Walmart has, leaving them with roughly about a 2 to 3 cent profit on every dollar they collect. Now that might sound quite small until you realize that Walmart is the largest retailer we have. They have $500 billion of revenue. That's $500 billion. Yes, that's with the T. $500 billion of revenue. So even though they might make about 2 or 3 cents profit on every dollar that they sell, they're selling a lot of dollars of stuff. So that's a lot of pennies that add up. So their profit is quite healthy for a big company. But as you see, it's not much. That contrasts to Apple. Apple Computer is a wildly profitable company, mostly because they sell their products for very, very high prices. So if you're selling a phone for $1,000, that's your sales revenue for selling that phone. You're collecting $1,000 from the customer. That's your $1,000. That's your revenue. After Apple pays all the expenses that they have for making that phone and selling that phone and all this other stuff, they are actually left for every $1,000 Apple's collect in revenue. Their profit is about $200 bucks. So of that $1,000 that they sold you a phone, 800 of that covered all the expenses they had, and the other 200 is their profit. Now compare that to the Walmart example. For the Walmart example I gave you, for every dollar, they're keeping about 2 or 3 cents. So compare that to Apple. For every dollar, they're keeping about 20 cents. That's a big, big difference in the profitability of a company. But those are the differences between a high price model like Apple has, high prices to customers is high revenue, and a low price model like Walmart has. So think about the stores you go into and the prices that they charge. That's the revenue that they're collecting from customers. So if you walk into a store that has very, very low prices, you walk into, say, a dollar store, you know that their sales revenue is going to be tied to every dollar. And their profit is going to be relatively minuscule per dollar. They might make 3, 4, or 5 cents profit on every dollar. That's different than if you walk into a Mercedes dealer or a Lexus dealer or even a Tesla dealer that are selling extremely high priced products. They're going to have a pretty fat profit at the end of all of that. There is a relationship between how much revenue a company collects and how much profit they make. So generally speaking, higher priced goods tend to have a bigger profit margin in them than lower priced goods. That's not true for every single good that's sold, but that tends to be true in general. Okay. So remember that next time you walk into a store and you're buying stuff and you're thinking, these guys always promote low prices. I wonder what their profit is on this. Good stuff, good stuff. So profits are important because they are the reward that business owners get for providing you what you need and what you want, okay? And so they are very happy to sell you this stuff because they're very happy to make a profit by selling you this stuff, okay? This is important because business owners have assumed a substantial amount of risk in starting a business for you. And so the reward, they want the reward to be there for taking that particular risk. And so that's basically how they see things, okay? All right, so I am going to stop here for today because the economics piece is quite long. And I don't want to get into that without continuing. So that we're going to be doing on Tuesday.